Afternoon greetings, everyone. Can you hear my voice? Greetings. Thank you for coming to spend some time with us this afternoon after lunch. My name is Sherina Davis. I am the Senior Learning Specialist at an organization called Safe Horizon. And it's my pleasure to introduce a wonderful person, facilitator and practitioner, Lucia McBee. I'll introduce her, some of her wonderful credentials in a moment, but I wanted to share, to give you kind of some breadth and depth of my experience with and of her. So we had the opportunity to have Lucia come to Safe Horizon and do actually, I think, 2 or 3 cohorts of mindfulness-based stress reduction, which I believe was a 9-week course. And it's kind of changed the way in which we've been doing our work. I've been practicing mindfulness in my life and in my being for over 3 years. And also having this experience has supported our staff who, in case you don't know what Safe Horizon does, we work with survivors and victims or just people who have been harmed by violence and crime. And so to do that type of work, one of the things that's important for us is to pause and take care of ourselves, because we ourselves are impacted through our connections while we're supporting folks who have been impacted by harm. And by us organizationally kind of resetting our clocks, mindfulness has helped us connect more with each other. It has helped us be more present in the work. And also like in our day-to-day practices. So part of my role is I write curriculum and train our staff, who are mostly like case managers and things of that nature. And in our practices, we've incorporated starting our meetings and our trainings with grounding ourselves in the moment. And how that has transformed so many of our staff. So I'll give you an example. Our facility staff were like, I didn't know that this was possible, to kind of like reset their clock by just taking like 2 to 3 minutes in the morning to be present and be in the room. And some of our maintenance staff have shared with us that this has helped them just like in their lives, not get into arguments so fast and to be present. And so I share that with you because today you'll have a chance to kind of think about those practices in a way that makes sense for you. And hopefully you'll come away with some tools and, again, beginning practices to have this be meaningful in the work that you do and in the communities that you serve. So I hope that you're with it. Doable? And we'll also keep you awake. Semi-present. So I just wanted to share and introduce Lucia McBee. She has a master's in social work and public health. She's a certified yoga teacher and has taught mindfulness in a wide variety of settings, including hospitals, clinics, colleges, and social service agencies, including staff and the clients that the organization serve. And one of the things I also want to share with her is her philosophy is that mindfulness is for everyone. And she focuses on what our abilities are, not what our disabilities are. So that's powerful. So without further ado, Lucia McBee.
Of course, one of the things that keeps mindfulness going in an organization is a champion. And Sherina has been a champion for this, so it is really important when we bring it back. But anyway, I'm very happy to be here. As Sherina said, my passion is bringing mindfulness to everyone. And just to put that in context, I used to work in long-term care, and I taught people on our dementia unit. I taught the staff on our dementia unit. End of life, all of that. My belief is that as long as we're breathing, we still can practice mindfulness. Right? So, and that we should be practicing mindfulness, or that it can be very helpful to practice mindfulness. But let's go back for a minute, because as Sherina said, the program that I teach is called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. I didn't say this. First of all, we're going to be doing a lot of experiential work here. Is that okay? That's grounded in the belief that really, you should not believe anything I say, that what you find out from your own experience will be the truth of what you learn, right? And that we're all the experts in our own experience. But on the other hand, there may be things that feel challenging or new or awkward. You don't have to like it. You just have to do it. We may have time for questions. It's a big group, so I will open it up at the end for questions, and I'll also stay a little after if people have questions they'd like to ask me. And this is for you. This is for you. We'll talk about why that can benefit our clients too, but let's just start with you. I was just telling Sherina I taught a smaller group yesterday at a program that helps children on the spectrum for the caregivers of these children. Very challenging work also. And as I was teaching them, I noticed this kind of look on the faces of kind of disbelief or suspicion, and I realized, and I was talking to the leaders afterwards, that most of our in-services aren't about us, right? They're about how we can be better care providers, right? But my firm belief is that both are true. If we're better taking care of ourselves, we'll be better taking care of our clients. So let's just stop for a moment. You're here, but what is giving you the information you're here? How do you know you're here? What are you aware of? Notice how you're feeling. And we'll proceed. So sometimes we can have very short practices. We'll do some longer ones later, but just little short practices like this throughout the day can be a start. Okay, so stress. This is mindfulness-based stress reduction. Anybody familiar with stress here? Yes, raise your hand. You know stress? Yeah, okay. So let's take that hand and put it, two hands here, right? So take that hand and put it on the place in your body that you feel stress. Right? Could be the shoulders, the gut, right? Right. A lot on the shoulders, right? Sometimes the belly, sometimes the back, right? So stress is experience. It's very much an embodied experience, right? We feel it. We can feel it in our body in many ways, right? But we also, I'm sure you'll acknowledge, we feel it in terms of our emotions, right? Anybody notice they get a little bit more irritable when they get stressed out, right? Or anxious, or what about our mind? Is it harder to concentrate when we're overwhelmed and stressed out? Yeah, a little bit. And also our behaviors might be affected, right? We might sleep more, sleep less, eat more, eat less. So all of this can be related. So it really is a mind-body emotional experience, stress, right? And this is the good news, bad news, right? Because all of the practices of mindfulness are based on this relationship of the mind, the body, and the emotions, and the spirit. So our nervous system has a sympathetic and a parasympathetic aspect. Both are important. They need to be balanced. Most of us are familiar with the sympathetic nervous system, and it's not a bad thing. It's helped us survive danger. We don't have these kinds of dangers anymore, but there are still times. Maybe we walk into the street and a car's coming at us. We didn't see him. Our kid falls into the pool. We don't want to be sitting there thinking, right? We have this ability to jump in and act without thinking, right? And that's good. But the problem is we're doing it consistently now. We don't have these kinds of dangers, and we're acting as if, say, a fight with our spouse or boss are the same kind of danger. And think about it. Think about what happens when you're stressed. What happens, the tension here. All of this is important. Basically, our muscles tense so we can get away. Our heart rate increases. Our breathing accelerates, right? Our mind prepares for action. So all of these things are really important to escape danger. But the other thing that happens when we're under stress, this kind of stress, is that everything that we don't need to respond to the stress shuts down, right? So our immune system, we do not need to be boosting our immune system when we're responding to danger. Or our GI system. Very often we might have GI issues when we're under stress, our thinking. So all of this is very, very helpful in the immediate response to stress or danger, life-threatening situations, but not so helpful if we're doing it chronically, right? And it can lead to all of this. That is not to say if you get sick, it's your fault. That's not so helpful thinking either, but it can lead or exacerbate many conditions. It can also affect our work. This is one study that was done with physicians, but I think we can all identify with this. So what happens with burnout, right? Either we've been burnt out, we've seen it in others, or both. We're not so enthusiastic about our work. We're not so compassionate. We don't feel like our work makes sense anymore, right? It doesn't feel meaningful. So why did you go into this work? For the big bucks? Yeah? that big fat paycheck you get? No, we go into this work because we care. Because we care about making a difference in people's lives. And what happens when we stop feeling like we're not making a difference? It's not meaningful. It's like not getting a paycheck, right? So we also tend to make mistakes more. We might treat people as if they're objects. And finally, it appears to influence patient adherence to recommended therapy, right? So those of us who work directly with clients, we talk about do you talk about non-compliant clients ever? Non-compliant, right? We never think about our role in this, but it totally makes sense. I mean, think about when you go to a healthcare provider, and if that person is attentive to you, you're much more likely to pay attention to their recommendations than if they are not, right? And we've all seen both, right? So it makes sense. Just our ability to be attentive to our clients can make a difference in terms of compliance. This is the other thing that's, I think, the most important that I want to convey. Stress is contagious. Again, this is something we all intuitively know. You've walked into a room or had somebody else walk into a room and they're stressed out and you feel it in your body. You start to escalate. It's contagious. So hopefully by learning some of these skills, we can do the opposite, because I do think the opposite is also contagious. If we can learn to ramp down our stress, we can ramp down a situation. And we'll be doing some practice that'll help you to do that. So the final point I want to make about stress is based on this book by Robert Sapolsky. And if you're interested in stress and the stress response, it's an excellent book. This is the leading researcher and writer on, has anybody read his work? Robert Sapolsky, you've seen it? Yeah. He has some interesting YouTube videos. He's quite a character, but his book is excellent and very well written, very clearly written about what happens when we happen under stress and what the research shows. But the book is called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Anybody have any idea about why zebras don't get ulcers? No stress? Oh, I don't know. I think that they probably deal with these guys. But they experience it differently. Thank you. But that's, I do think, so this is it. So we're out in the savannah, strolling along and, with our zebra friend, and all of a sudden this creature comes along. And, of course, our stress response kicks in, and we start running really fast. And we escape somehow. Both the zebra and we escape. And we're at a watering hole, and we're hanging out there. Whew, we made it. The zebra's going to go right back to eating grass. What are we going to do? Worry, right? When is it going to happen again? I got to tell my family, post it on Facebook, right? Right? How am I going to get home? Oh my God, I can't believe this happened, right? So, and it has to do with our unique brains, because we do have a lot more capacity in our brain than the zebra does, or the tiger, or anybody. We have this ability to process information, to review information, which has allowed us to live and to live much more comfortably and evolve in ways that the zebra never has, right? But it does have this downside of making us vulnerable to chronic stress. Oops. So, what do we do about it? Okay, well, imagine if there were a pill that were shown through research. I know we're a very pill-oriented culture. The research showed that this pill could help us be happier. And it was legal. No bad side effects. Could help us reduce our stress and anxiety. Feel more in control and less reactive. This is one of the key benefits of mindfulness that people report, this ability to be less reactive, as Sherina was saying. This also increases our immunity. Think back to what happens when we're stressed out and how our immunity diminishes. Or if we do get sick, we might have less sick time out. It also helps us to be kinder to ourselves and others. Isn't that something we could all use, right? In this world, a little bit more kindness. And free, no side effects, right? So this is mindfulness, and the research has shown all this. I won't have time to go into the research. I'll point to some of it and where you can find some of it, but it is mindfulness. Has all these benefits when practiced. But what is it? You know, we've all heard about it. It's a lot more popular than when I first started teaching mindfulness, so I'm glad because I get to teach it to a lot more people. People have heard of it, but then we're not quite sure what it is. So the work that I do is based on the work of Jon Kabat-Zinn. But I just want to say before I begin that this idea of awareness and compassion. So the idea is that this is about, the bottom line is this is a practice of awareness and compassion, both important. But how Jon Kabat-Zinn defines it is paying attention to our lives moment by moment on purpose in a certain way without judgment. I think we all know what those words mean. They make sense, right? But I want to put them in the context of mindfulness, right? So we'll do a little exercise to begin with. And you can stand up if you're able. And I'm going to give you 60 seconds to walk around and count the number of things that you see that are red. Red. You don't have to say what they are, just count. Get a number for me. And okay, you can go back to your seats now. You can keep counting while you're on the way, if you're an eager counter. So what did you notice? Any response? Yeah.
My mind went elsewhere. It just went into, where's the red?
So you noticed, you looked for red, but then your mind wandered away from the task?
No.
Oh, you focused. For 60 seconds, we can focus our attention. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Yeah, we can focus our attention. At least for 60 seconds we can. So that's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, I noticed that as I was continuing and just piggybacking off of this gentleman, and then I'm focusing even more, that now with intention, I was intentionally looking for red.
Did you get better at it?
Yes.
So we get better. So we can focus. We can focus for 60 seconds, and we can get better at it over the period of 60 seconds. For some of us, our attention might have wandered, but I'm going to guess that it came back. What else did you notice during this 60-second exercise? Anybody? I don't see. Oh. In the back there.
So what I realized was that I ignored every color. All I was looking for was the red.
So we can really
Focus.
So we're looking for red, we find red. Did red come more easily over time? You started seeing more and more red? What kind of numbers did you get? 11? Anybody get more than 11? 17? 20? 30? More than 30? We're having an auction here? Okay. Miss 30. Okay. This is... No, this is it. That's a really good point, though. I'm so glad you brought that up, because this is exactly what happens. There's like a parallel track. We're paying attention, we're doing this task, we're focused, but at the same time, we start to notice our habits. Is competition something that's a theme for you, would you say? Is this something that seems familiar to you? No, being competitive. Is that something? Yeah. So we start to notice our habits, right? We're always practicing something, but we're not really aware because our habits are so ingrained. They're kind of like our go-to place. So noticing our habits is really a key part of this. So that is paying attention. And there's more, but this is kind of the basic of paying attention. We'll do more of it later. But what are we paying attention to? Moment by moment. So I think anybody who's heard of mindfulness has heard of this idea of moment by moment awareness, right? We're in the moment. So from the basis of mindfulness meditation, the first thing we pay attention to is the body. It's grounded in the body. And why do we pay attention to the body? Because where is the mind? Where's our mind usually? When you're thinking, what are you thinking about? Everything? Yeah? For example? What are you going to do when you leave here? Right? Right. So the future. We're thinking about the future. We're making plans, which is important. We need to do that. It's not that we shouldn't think about the future. But there's a little downside to thinking about the future. Right? What happens when we're thinking about the future all the time? We're not in the present, for one thing, but we also might become a little anxious, maybe, about what might happen. Or like Mark Twain had this wonderful saying. He said, the worst things in my life never happened to me. Right? So it's not so helpful to be thinking over and over again about these things that might happen, especially if they're not so good things. And in a way that's protective, in a way it's important, we have to do that. But in another way, the amount we do it can cause anxiety. And might we also be spending some time thinking about the past? Right? So that, again, that's good. We need to review the past. We need to look at what might be going on in the past that we might want to do differently, or to remember we need to buy milk on the way home, or whatever. So we need to be aware of the past, but when we think too much about the past, does anybody know the word for that? Regret, rumination. Rumination. That's, you regret, kind of, wish I hadn't done it this way. So over and over again, thinking about the past is called rumination. And rumination actually has been found to be the leading cause of depression, the thing that starts the depressive cycle going. And of course, the two most diagnosed mental illness out there now are anxiety and depression, right? So this is why I think mindfulness has become so helpful to people in dealing with those particular conditions, which so many of us are impacted by, right? So we stay in the moment in our body, right? This is why we pay attention to the body, because this breath will never be breathed again, right? Gentleman over here mentioned on purpose, the fact that we're doing it with intention. So when we look for red, we find red because we set our intention to find red. If I'd said look for colors, you would have found colors, right? If I said just walk around the room, your experience would have been very different. So the experience is guided by what our intention is, right? So this is an important part of it too. But the final part I want to talk about is this idea of without judgment. So what does that mean, and how does that work, and why is it important? As I said earlier, awareness and compassion. So the compassion is equally important because it turns out that learning new things, we can be very much unhelpful to be judging ourselves, right? For example, I like to give the example of a child learning how to walk, right? Anybody got children that learned how to walk recently? What happens? They fall down, yeah. And then they get back up, right? Anybody ever known a kid that didn't get up after they fell down? Oh, this isn't for me. I can't do this. I'll never walk, right? Right? No. And we all did. We walked into this room. We did that. We went through that getting up and falling down and getting up and falling down. But what happens now when we try something new and we don't do so well at it? Right? Yeah. We may be judging ourselves or feel embarrassed or ashamed or maybe even say to ourselves, oh, you'll never do this. Why did you even try? So being compassionate to ourselves is very, very important on many levels in helping us learn and grow. Now, I'm just going to say a brief bit about the evidence, and then I want you to discover your own evidence from the practices. But there is a lot of evidence. But the first evidence is, of course, the idea that our mind and body are connected. So you all knew immediately where you felt stress in your body. I don't think anybody didn't know where they feel stress in their body. Your body is always giving you your information, right? Very often we don't pay attention until it gets to be yelling and screaming at us, but our body's always giving us information. So this is an important part of the evidence, I think, of these practices. And this is why they've lasted so long. So another kind of evidence could be historical evidence. These practices that, based on mindfulness, have been around for 2,500 years and aren't just limited to Buddhism and Hinduism. They're also in all of the major spiritual traditions have some contemplative component to them, right? So they've been continuously practiced for 2,500 years. I think that's kind of an evidence in itself. But there is a tremendous amount of empirical evidence, the science out there. So this is from the American Mindfulness Research Association that shows the amount of studies that have been done that use the word mindfulness in academic journals. So you can see that the evidence is really mounting, that the science is beginning to catch up and be able to show that this is helpful. Part of it is just that we're able to study things like immune response in the blood, that we're able to see what happens in the brain when we practice. So all of our ability to look at things is so sophisticated now. So if you're interested in more, it's called the American Mindfulness Research Association, and you can look it up and see any research that you're interested in. So I said that we start with sensations. Thoughts and feelings can also be part of the field of awareness. But I think for now, we'll start with the experience of physical sensations. So we're going to do a guided body scan. And to do this practice, of course, I usually encourage people to lie down, and if you're really courageous, you could do that. But if not, just sitting comfortably in your chair. You want to sit in a supported position, and if you want to sit with your back against the wall or any other place, you're welcome to do that. But throughout this practice, I'm going to encourage stillness. And if you're comfortable closing your eyes, you can close your eyes. So this is going to be a longer exercise, and the suggestion is to pay attention as closely as possible, but if your attention wanders from my instructions, just come back whenever you notice that your attention has wandered. So whether you're sitting or lying down, whatever position you're sitting in, let's just start by, or lying in, by noticing the points of the body that are in contact with the support, the place the body is supported, in contact with the chair, the floor, both. Notice how the body is held. That feeling of weight, being held here by gravity. And then any other sensations throughout the body. Perhaps the temperature in the room, movement. Just anything you notice. How do you know you're here? Not in your mind, but in your body. What is giving you the information that you're here now? And then we'll turn our attention to our breath. And let's start with some deeper breathing. So if you're not familiar with diaphragmatic breathing, placing your hands on your belly and taking a nice, long, slow breath in, really deep breath, feeling the belly expand. It's almost as if we had a balloon there. And then exhaling, very slow, long exhalation. And when you're ready, breathing in again. Nice and slow, softening the belly, expanding the belly. Notice how that feels. On the out-breath, contracting. Seeing if the out-breath can be at least as long as the in-breath. One more time at your own pace, seeing if this can be the longest, deepest breath. And after the end of the next exhalation, coming back to normal, the hands can resume sitting on the lap or the floor or wherever feels right, or they can stay on the belly. Just making sure the body is supported and as comfortable as possible. So I'm going to direct your attention to different parts of the body, and again, follow along as best as possible. On the other hand, if there's any area of the body that I ask you to pay attention to and just feels too uncomfortable, or there's any history there, please feel free to go back to the breath. There's no right or wrong in any of this. It's about listening to what's right for you moment by moment. So we'll begin by focusing our attention to the toes of the left foot. Noticing any sensations here, the big toe, the little toe, the toes in between. Now, if we stub our toe or drop something on our toe, we surely have sensation there, but can we start noticing the more subtle sensations? Tingling or throbbing, pressure, warmth or coolness. If it feels right to you, on the in-breath, directing the breath to the left toes, on the out-breath, out from this area. And on the next out-breath, we'll include in our awareness the sole of the left foot. Perhaps feeling the pressure on the floor, perhaps not, perhaps tingling, pulsing, firmness or softness. And on the out-breath, let's expand to include the whole left foot, the sides of the foot, the top, the bottom. So we're just getting curious about our experience moment by moment. Perhaps noticing all the sensations inside the foot, the tiny bones and joints and muscles that allow us to stand and balance and move. On the out-breath, we'll move our attention up to the left ankle, the bigger joint, and then all the way up the left lower leg, noticing sensation perhaps in one particular area, perhaps in general. Perhaps strong sensation, or perhaps really subtle sensations. Perhaps sensations that are steady or changing moment by moment. There's no right or wrong way to have this experience. Whatever your experience is just as it should be. So we're just coming back to direct experience. If judgments arise, we just notice that and come back. What is my left lower leg feeling right now? And then moving up to the left knee and the left upper leg. This larger, heavier bone. Can you feel the weight of this or the large muscle here? Sensations on the surface of the left thigh or deeper. And then let's take a moment to observe the left leg altogether, from the hip joint to the tips of the toes, letting the breath travel up and down as we observe how all of this works together, the toes connecting to the foot, connecting to the ankle, lower leg, knee, upper leg. And just notice whatever you notice here. And then taking a moment to observe the left and right legs together. Maybe similar, maybe different. Just paying attention sometimes can create a different sensation in our body. But see if this is the case for you. Whatever I say is just a suggestion. It's not right or wrong. It's just a suggestion. Your experience is just as it should be. And then we'll bring the attention all the way down to the right toes, letting go of the left leg and noticing any sensation in the right toes. Could be in the toes, the toenails, the space in between the toes. On the out-breath, including the sole of the right foot. Again, feeling pressure, tingling perhaps, general sensations or specific to one area. And on the out-breath, let's include the whole right foot, inside, outside, back, front, sides. Perhaps directing the breath to this area if that feels right. On the out-breath, moving up to the right ankle and the right lower leg. Can you feel your bone or the muscle? So we're just curious. Again, we're not judging our experience if possible, or if we do, just coming back to whatever it is now. If the attention wanders, we bring it back. We also bring a kind of kindness to our experience. And very often our relationship with our body is not so kind. The out-breath, let's move up to the knee, the right thigh. Can you feel the contact with the chair or the floor? Can you feel the weight of the bone and muscle or sensations on the skin of clothing? And breathing in and out of all of this and bringing the whole right leg into our awareness. Again, feeling the connection, hip joint, thigh, knee, lower leg, foot, toes. All connected and working together. And on the out-breath, letting all this go, we'll bring our attention to our pelvis, large bone in our body, feeling the weight of this. Perhaps, again, these are just suggestions, or perhaps feeling the contact of the buttocks with the chair or the floor, maybe even the release of the buttocks, or maybe tightness. Again, there's no right or wrong. Sometimes it's helpful just to notice the places in our body we hold tension. As we move up to the lower back on the out-breath, perhaps noticing this might be an area where we even might experience pain or discomfort. If at any part of this experience there's physical pain, the instruction in this practice is to turn towards it, to pay attention to it, see if we can bring a neutral awareness to our experience. If there's pain, is it sharp or dull? Is it shallow or deep? Changing or steady? So just noticing any sensations in the lower back, around the spine, the sacrum, the muscles that support the spine. Moving up on the out-breath now to the middle back, bringing awareness to the rib cage and the shoulder blades. Can you feel the breath here, gently expanding and contracting? On the out-breath, let's move to the side body. Can you feel your breath here in the soft belly, or the ribs on the side, on the left and right together? All the way up to the underarms. Can you feel the moisture or warmth there where the arms connect with the torso? And then around to the front body. Perhaps predominantly feeling the breath here, rising and falling in the belly or the ribs or the upper chest. But maybe other internal sensations. Can you feel your heart beating? Digestion? Any other sensations of the organs that support us? Or external sensations on the skin, contact with clothing? Coming back again and again to this moment, taking a moment to observe all the internal organs and the external part of our torso before we breathe out, releasing this and bringing our attention all the way down to the tips of the fingers on both hands. This part of the body is said to have a lot of nerve endings in it, a lot of sensitivity. But see if this is the case for you. Again, this is your experience, not right or wrong. What do you notice in your fingertips? Tingling, throbbing, warmth? If they're touching a surface, is the surface smooth or rough, hard or soft? If touching the air, is there movement in the air? Is there a temperature? Directing the breath to the tips of the fingers of both the right and left hands, and on the out-breath we'll include all of the fingers. Taking a moment to observe what is the position of the fingers and how do you know this ability we have to know the position of our body in space, called proprioception. On the out-breath, including both hands, the back, the front, the sides. Perhaps feeling moisture or warmth on the palms. Perhaps not. Perhaps an awareness to all the tiny bones and muscles in the hands that allow us to care for ourselves and others. On the out-breath, we'll move up from the left and right hand to the wrists on both sides. The lower arms, the elbows and upper arms. Perhaps feeling the arms all together on both sides, noticing where their weight is supported and where it's not, where there's tension and where there's not. Sensations on the surface or deeper. On the out breath, letting all this go, bringing the attention to the shoulders and the whole base of the neck here, the upper part of the torso. Another place where we tend to hold tension, as we just noticed when we did the exercise, the first exercise in the room. So notice if you do feel tension there, where you feel it and how you feel it, and is it changing or steady? Then moving up the neck, the final part of the spine, noticing sensations in all the muscles that support the head. And then the entire neck on the surface, but even deeper in the throat. Can you feel your breath moving in the throat, or saliva? Letting this go and turning attention to the scalp. Noticing sensations here, strong or mild, changing or steady, throbbing, pulsing. Moving to the ears on both sides and down to the jaw hinge, that place where our jaw connects with the skull. Noticing if there's tension or holding here or not. Again, we're just observing. This isn't another opportunity to judge yourself. And then the jaw itself, all the way down to the chin. And then moving the attention up to the lips. Can you feel your top lip touching your bottom lip? Or your bottom lip touching your top? Or both? Or perhaps sensations on the lips themselves of dryness or moisture. Sensations in the muscles around the mouth or the corners of the mouth. Tightness, looseness, turning up or down. Going into the mouth itself. Perhaps noticing any sensations of moisture, of hardness or softness. Taste. And then moving to the outside of the cheeks. Perhaps feeling the air in the room, or not. And over to the nostrils, the nose. Can you feel the movement of the nostrils with the breath? Can you feel the temperature of the breath as it enters and exits? Then moving to the eyes, the muscles around the eyes, the eyeballs, the eyebrows and the space in between the eyebrows. And then all the way up to the forehead. This is an area that we often carry expression or throughout the whole face. Just perhaps notice the expressions we hold by habit. And then we'll bring our attention all the way to the top of the head, that place where we had a soft spot as a baby. And let's imagine that we could direct the breath in through the top of the head and it would travel all through our body, starting with the top, down through the head, neck, shoulders, arms, torso, legs, all the way down to the toes on the in-breath. And on the out-breath, let's imagine the breath could travel in the opposite direction. From the toes, through the soles, all the way up through the legs and torso and arms, neck and head. So we're experiencing our body, but a little bit more quickly now than we just did, flowing with each breath. And if you feel like it's helpful, even as we breathe in, perhaps imagining some qualities that you'd like to infuse in your body. Joy or peace, health, healing. Perhaps on the out-breath, releasing anything that isn't helpful in this moment. Worry, planning, judgment. And with the next out breath, letting go of this intentional breath, and we'll just come back to observing our body as a whole, not as a bunch of separate parts, but in its entirety, working together, connected. Noticing anything we notice about our body, the movement of the breath, the weight of the body. Subtle or stronger sensations. And we'll begin to deepen the breath as we start to transition. And it's always helpful to transition slowly. So let's start with deepening the breath, just intentionally taking some deeper breaths. When you're ready, starting to maybe wiggle the fingers and toes. And then moving the shoulders or head or whatever else feels right, just very slowly noticing how it feels to move after being still. And then we'll just do a few little stretches to finish up. These are stretches that you can do in your chair. It's really easy, nice way to move the spine around. So on the out breath, let's slide the hands forward towards the knees, curling over, dropping the head, breathing out. On the in-breath, we're going to lift the chest and kind of look up, expanding the front body. So we're moving the spine in this way, curling it in each direction. And if you're not in the chair, you can move in any way that feels right. Good, a couple more times, letting the breath initiate the movement, letting the spine really curl in these two opposite directions. And then extending the arms up and stretching with both arms. And going a little bit side to side so we can get a nice side stretch in there. So we're stretching both sides, so we're stretching the spine and side to side in that way. And then let's finish off with a little twist. So we'll bring both hands to the left thigh, get nice and tall, and turn to look over the left shoulder. Good, so we're twisting the spine. These are the 6 directions of the spine. We're coming back now, going to the other side, looking over that shoulder. So the spine can curl forward and back, side to side, and it can make a nice little twist there. So when you're ready, let's take a little time we won't have time for everybody to share their experience, but I would like you all to turn to your neighbor and talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you. And we'll come back all together in a few minutes. Okay, so let's finish up. When everybody's ready, I'd love to hear from some of you to questions or things that came up during that experience, what you noticed. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. So, was that hand raised?
I expected to fall asleep, but I feel so rested.
Yeah. So Kabat-Zinn calls this falling awake. Right? So this deep relaxation our body really craves. But did you ever notice when you're sleeping, you're not actually getting that deep relaxation often? Right? So our body really craves this. But what you were doing was letting your body really rest by paying attention to the moment, letting go of the worries about the future or the past, and just being present. Right?
As soon as you said go ahead and discuss it with your neighbor, it got very loud in here, and I felt like the first thing is, can we just go back? So relaxing. Yeah.
Yeah, it did get pretty loud in here pretty quickly. Okay, what else? Yeah.
As you were saying, focus on your skull. Yeah, the skull. I was just thinking about what was I going to do tomorrow. I wasn't focusing really on it.
So you went back to your brain then?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you will wander. The attention did wander, right? And that's one of the myths about mindfulness, is that if we're mindful, we're always paying attention. But the attention wanders. It's very natural for the attention to wander. But every time we bring it back, we are training our mind to come back. And this was what helps us to be less reactive. Right? Other questions, comments? Yeah.
I was just saying that your voice is very soothing. I think if your voice is very soothing, if it wasn't, I think it would have made a difference.
I have to practice this in order to teach it. So that's not a bad thing. But as I'm giving the guidance, I'm really getting instruction from my own body. So I'm making suggestions. Maybe your experience was different, but a lot of it comes from my own experience. But there are a lot of wonderful, if you'd like the body scan, there's a lot of these guided meditations online that you can go to. You can try different voices, different lengths. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter. So I highly encourage this as a practice to tuning into our body. What else do people notice?
I kept yawning. That's it.
How many people fell asleep? Yeah. Yeah. Well, we do tend to be a sleep-deprived population, right? So the minute we, calm down, be quiet, we crash, right? Maybe you need to sleep. Was it a nice nap, I hope? Yeah. You feel well rested? What? He felt safe, yeah. So...
At first, when you were talking, all I could hear was, I'm like a bird, I want to fly away, that song. And then after a while, I could hear you. And then I was like, yeah, I'm done. I just couldn't hold it anymore. And I was just like, yeah, I think I'm falling asleep. So
a lot of things happen.
Yeah, I couldn't.
Right? So the attention it is effortful. This is the other thing. It is a practice to keep coming back. Right? It's a practice. It can be effortful. Or sometimes we say stress reduction can be stressful. Right? What else did you notice?
While doing the exercise, I felt the points in my body that were the heaviest. Yeah.
Were you surprised that you could feel these different parts of your body? Yeah. We notice that we're kind of off-center sometimes, and we're not even paying attention to it, so it brings us back to paying attention to our body, right? So we can pay attention, and we can learn a lot from our body. So this is as simple or as complicated as mindfulness. I'll just show you for a moment what the research says about what you just did. Because a lot of what you brought out is exactly what The learning is. So it's about attention regulation, right? So one of my participants in these practices told me that it's kind of like lifting a weight. So you have this weight here, let's pretend this is a weight, and the weight is my attention, and my shoulder is the focus of my attention. So I place my attention on my breath, and I'm paying attention to my breath, and I'm noticing my breath going out and coming in. Then I start to feel a little hungry, and I wonder where I'm going to go for lunch, and my attention wanders away, right? And then I remember, bring it back, right? And I do, and I'm breathing in and breathing out, and then, I forgot to call my sister, right? So this is the practice of moving away and coming back. That's exactly the practice of mindfulness. The practice is that moment that we remember to come back. Because what we're doing is we're training that muscle, that attentional muscle. And you can actually see in the brain the pathways that are happening as we do this. We're creating pathways that help us become less reactive. So we're not so much bouncing around to what happens to us, but we can make choices. There are some times that it's very helpful to be reactive, but most of the time it's not so helpful, right? And we're paying attention to body awareness. It's also about emotion regulation. So some people compare this to exposure therapy. In exposure therapy, of course, we gradually start to get comfortable with the unwanted object, right? If we're afraid of flying, we start talking about flying, looking at airplanes. We gradually work ourselves up. In this practice, we start to pay attention to discomfort. So again, if you notice during the practice, I said, if there's parts that are uncomfortable, the suggestion is to pay attention to those, not to push it away. So we're learning to be more comfortable with discomfort, which is kind of antithetical to how we usually function. We don't usually turn towards the difficult. But the more we can have practice doing that, again, the less reactive we'll be. And we start to see that we're not the person we thought we were, so we don't get so identified with our sense of self. We learn a lot about ourselves through these practices. We don't get so stuck on ideas of ourselves, but we start to experience ourselves in this moment, who we are. Or this is a more simple way of putting it, the Homer Simpson model. So we pay attention to now, focusing on an object, lose focus, refocus, lose focus. This is it. So Sherina, you want to start passing? So Sherina's got some cards I'm going to pass out. We're not over yet, but I have cards there, and on the back of my cards is this little exercise. So one of my teachers said, how do you remember to practice? And sometimes we need cue cards. So this could be a cue card. You could put it on your desk. It has the STOP on it. And let's practice it. Just stop whatever you're doing. And notice that you're breathing. Notice how you're feeling in general. And then we'll proceed. So here are some of the assumptions of this practice. The assumptions and the research confirms this, that most of the time we're not paying attention. About half of the time, actually, we're not paying attention to our life. And that's not when we're sleeping, it's when we're going about our everyday life. Half of the time we're not paying attention, right? But we can develop a sustained awareness. But it takes practice. Again, we're always practicing something. Right here, right now, you are practicing something. If it's paying attention, you're practicing that. If it's not, you're practicing that. We get better at whatever we practice. This is not to judge ourselves, but just to notice. What am I practicing now? And what happens when we're not practicing? Well, we tend to wander, to ruminate, which can lead to depression, or we can get agitated, we can get anxious, multitask. We also become more reactive when we're not paying attention. And we also tend to be less happy. So this all comes out of some research that was done where they gave about 2,000 people these devices, and they'd contact them throughout the day, and they'd say, what are you doing? And the people would say what they're doing, and then they'd say, were you paying attention to what you were doing? And they'd say yes or no. And it turns out that they reported 47% of the time that they were paying attention. So again, that's about half of it. And that's, I think that's a little biased because I'm sure people wanted to say that they were paying attention. But the other thing they asked them is, how happy are you? And it turns out it's very much correlated to paying attention, which is interesting because we tend to attach happiness to certain things. Getting new things, going someplace, being on vacation, whatever. But actually it's more related to our presence, our ability to be present. But again, don't believe me, this is all research you can do on yourself and your own experience. Mm-hmm. So we did this a little before, and let's just do it again now because I want to reinforce this. The diaphragmatic breathing, if you're not familiar with this is the number one thing you can do in the moment to bring down the sympathetic response. So the first step is to sit up comfortably and soften the belly. So part of what gets in the way of this is that we want to suck it in all the time, but we're going to let the belly be soft. We're going to take a nice breath in with the hands on the belly, feeling the belly expand. So the diaphragm pushes the belly out as if there were a balloon there. Breathing in, long and deep, and then a nice, slow, long breath out. Again, breathing in as deeply as possible, feeling that expansion in the lower belly, and out. And one more time at your own pace, seeing if this breath can be the longest and slowest and deepest. So this is a practice that doesn't take much time, but what it does is it shifts the nervous system. So if you think about where does our breath go when we're anxious, it goes up here, right? And just by breathing down into the lower part of our lungs, which expands the belly, can shift. So, again, but don't believe me. Just try it for yourself. Something that you can do almost anywhere, anytime. Say you're in a meeting and things are escalating, try some deep breathing, see if things shift. I'm going to do this in a minute, and I think I'll end with a little practice in a minute. Oh, we're getting there, aren't we? Okay, so we talk about mindfulness. Another way of defining this is intention, which we talked about, is purposefulness, attention, and attitude. We haven't talked I did talk a lot about non-judgment, but I also want to talk about self-compassion, because this is also a practice that I think is so important. Being kind to ourselves. But first I should say that, we are very well trained in survival, and survival means that we have to be alert to things that are dangerous and unpleasant. So our mind is like Velcro for the negative and Teflon for the positive. It's an automatic thing. So in a way, we're kind of going against what our natural instincts are when we start paying attention to positive more than negative. But there are certain practices that can be helpful, and really, it's just the bottom line is that it's about being as kind to ourselves as we would to a good friend. I mean, we know if we had a good friend and they had a bad day, what would we do? We'd comfort them. It's going to get better. You're going to feel better. You did a great job. What do we do when we have a bad day for ourselves? I hope it's that, but very often it's not. We beat ourselves up. So again, we're giving kindness to ourselves, the same kind that we give to a good friend. It takes practice. Again, we've been practicing. If we are very self-critical or judgmental, we've been practicing that for a long time. We were taught probably at a very early age. So it takes time and intention to shift that. It doesn't mean that we don't judge things and that we have no judgment. It just means that we also include kindness there. If we could do something better, okay. We can evaluate that, but it doesn't mean we have to be mean or cruel to ourselves. So let me say a few things, and then I'm going to end with a metta meditation practice and some standing practice. The most important thing in all of this is to practice for yourself, but I do believe that this will also be conveyed to others non-verbally. There's a lot of opportunities if you live in this area, so many opportunities to find places that you can learn meditation and mindfulness. So I encourage you to take a class. If not, there's a lot online you can do. And I believe a resource book is going to go out. I sent them in materials, so that should come to you online, as well as all of these slides. And the other thing is just to pay attention to your life. Remember that every moment you are practicing something. So maybe every now and then, just what am I practicing? Am I present? Am I here? Right? So let's end by a couple other practices, and I want to do a mountain pose now. So let's just stand up in front of your chair, because this is a practice you can do almost any time. And for those of you who've never done yoga before, don't get scared, but this is a very simple yoga pose. So the first part of the mountain pose is to have the feet be parallel and right underneath the hips. So just looking down at your feet. See that they're parallel, about hip width apart. And then notice where your weight is on your feet. Just notice. And many of us in New York, I noticed, are leaning forward. We're always kind of going someplace. But sometimes we might want to feel, some of us might feel the weight on the back of our feet. Anybody feel the weight on the back of their feet? Yeah. And some might feel on the inside or the outside. So for the mountain pose, it's helpful to feel the weight right in the center of the foot. So you could rock around a little bit. Notice how it feels to put the weight in different parts of the foot. And then we want to land right back in the middle of the foot so that the weight is balanced right in the middle of the arch of your foot. And then coming to kind of a stillness, resting the weight in the center of the foot. It may feel a little awkward if you're not used to it, but see how it goes. And then if it's available to you, lifting the toes. And notice the leg muscles get slightly engaged when you do this. So we want to slightly engage the leg muscles so we can feel the muscles of the legs slightly holding the bones. You can bring the toes down if they're up, but just keeping that engagement so we really feel the connection with the earth on our feet. We feel the strength of the lower body, just like a mountain. A mountain is grounded, it's strong, it's connected to the earth. And, of course, the mountain also has the upper parts, and that reaches up to the sky. So see how tall we can get, almost imagining there were a string coming out of the top of the head, and we could extend through the spine, and using all the muscles to lift up through the vertebrae, getting taller. At the same time, we want to lift the shoulders up and down, bringing the shoulder blades together. You might want to bring the hands forward, so just at the side body, letting the hands come forward, feeling the shoulder blades coming together, and lifting in the sternum, right? And the final part is balancing the head. You know, with the work we do and the cell phone use, so many of us spend a lot of time like this. And if you don't know, our head weighs about 8 to 12 pounds. So it's kind of like a bowling ball. And if we're always going like this, gravity is going to take effect, and we're going to be like this. So every now and then, you might even want to take your fingers on the earlobes and just see if the ears are right over the collarbones. We don't want to tuck our chin in, but we don't want to stick it out. So just balancing the head there. And then let's just come back to stillness. The feet on the floor, the weight balanced in the center of the feet. The legs are engaged and strong. The torso is lifting up and open, the chest is lifting, the head is balanced. And just notice how it feels to stand like this. And then we're going to bring all of the weight over onto the right foot. The left toes can stay on the floor, or they can come up a little, or they can go up and down. See how that works for you. It's helpful to find something to look at that's not moving if you're doing this. This is balancing. And the toes can stay on the ground or come down. See what works for you. And then bringing that foot down, taking a moment to be on 2 feet again, standing in mountain pose. And let's come to the other foot. So we're feeling the weight on that foot. Again, the right toes can stay on the ground or they can come up, or they can go up and down. See how it works for you. Notice what happens to your breath, or if you begin to get tense in other parts of the body. Good. And then let's just shake it out a little. So, how much time do we spend standing in line? Right? A lot of time standing in line, waiting. You can sit down now if you'd like. But this is a great pose to do while you're standing in line. It engages all the muscles. We're standing straight. Anybody notice how much you're paying attention when you've got one foot in the air? It's hard to be distracted. So it can also help us with our balance, right? So there's so many ways to bring this into our everyday life, even as we're in the midst of being busy and standing in line and all the other things we do. So let's come back to seated. And we'll sit in a seated mountain pose. So this is a standing mountain pose, a seated mountain pose. The feet are still on the ground. Feeling that sense of grounding. The sit bones balanced in the chair. And then the upper body lifting, the shoulders relaxed. And taking a moment to, again, check in with yourself. What is your experience in this moment? What are you noticing? Is it changing? Is it steady? Is it agitated or calm? Or both? Maybe sometimes we feel a mixture of things. On the out-breath, we'll turn our attention now to the breath. Where is that place you feel that you're breathing predominantly? Is it in the nostrils, the chest, the belly? Once you've located that place, feeling the breath enter and exit, perhaps feeling the beginning or the end of each breath, the rhythm of the breath. If the attention wanders, bringing it back. Perhaps feeling the depth of the breath, the length, the steadiness or jerkiness. On the next out breath, we'll expand again to include the 3-minute breathing space, the whole body. So just feeling the whole body sitting here, noticing sensations throughout the body. Feeling the weight of the body in the chair perhaps, or the movement of the breath throughout the body. And with the next out breath, we'll end with a practice of loving kindness. This has traditionally been part of mindfulness, and you can use the words I suggest or any words that feel right to you. But we begin by offering compassion to ourselves. You can use these words. If you use other words, whatever seems right. It's not the word as the attitude of kindness to ourselves that we're taking an opportunity to be kind to ourselves. May I be happy and may I be well. May I be peaceful and may I be kind. Whatever's going on in my life, in the midst of it, may I be happy and well as possible. May I find peace in the midst of whatever is going on in my life. And may I practice kindness to myself. Notice how it feels to say these words. And even if you feel some resistance, see how that is for you to just try saying it. May I be happy. Whatever's going on in my life, may I be well. May I be peaceful. And may I be kind. Coming back to the breath. Again, notice how you're feeling in this moment. And when you're ready, you can blink your eyes open. So these are some just very short practices. What we did there, we did the mountain pose, the 3-minute breathing space. This is a really great, and by the way, all of this is online. The 3-minute breathing space is a really short, concrete practice. I always encourage if people want to start a practice to try doing this during a meeting. Start a meeting with this, you know. But if you're going to lead, you know, you really have to be in yourself doing these practices. So, oh, I'm sorry, were you still taking pictures? This should all come to you. My understanding is that the PowerPoint and the handout that I created for this group should be coming online to you. So, do you know more about that, Sheila? Or? What? No, it's after the conference, through the conference, because I sent it to the conference. It's not me that's sending it, it's through the conference that's sending it. Right. Kiara, right? Yes. Can you confirm that?
Hi. Yep, shnny.org. So the Supportive Housing Network's website. Yeah, you could just Google us and it'll come up. It'll be under the 2019 events. Yep.
So no need to take pictures or even try to remember. Okay, so we did these poses. We did the diaphragmatic breathing. So we've done some shorter or longer poses. You know, we've done a lot here today, including the self-compassion and the metta. So I just want to finish up by saying that we started by saying stress is contagious. I think we all can agree to that. But I do think the opposite can be contagious. And again, you don't have to believe me. Try it yourself. Next time you're in a stressful situation, take a breath. Feel your feet on the floor. Do a mountain pose. Take a moment for yourself. And then see if things shift. Even if they don't, you're going to feel better. So just finally, if you think you're too small to have an impact, try going to bed with a mosquito in the room. We all are much more powerful than we think we are, and just by what we embody. So we have a couple minutes left for questions or comments.
Questions, if you want to use that one for people. Does anyone have any questions?
Was it helpful? Yes. Oh, good. So everybody's kind of semi-comatose now, is that it? So relaxed? Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll stay for a little bit afterwards. So if you have specific questions for me, please feel free to come up, and I'm happy to talk to you about this.
Lobby downstairs, and now you can get a little capture.
Thank you so much.